It starts with a sound you learn to ignore, a faint rattle at idle, a stumble on a cold morning. You tell yourself it's nothing, a bit of old gas, the weather. But 3 months later, the check engine light is glowing orange, and the dealership hands you a bill for $400. 3 cans of fuel system cleaner, a throttle body service, and a line item that says, carbon deposit removal. You pay it because you don't have a choice, but a part of you already knows you just got treated like a wallet with legs. What they didn't tell you is that the real fix costs $1.80, the same ingredient the old mechanics reached for in 1973, the same one that keeps a 200,000-mile engine running like it just left the line. Your engine is dying slowly and you cannot see it. But Sojuom saw it 30 years ago, and he could spot it with his eyes closed. Is set. Promise is delivered. You will now walk through the layers of a lie, and then pick up a solution so cheap it feels like stealing. The official story goes like this. Modern engines are sealed tight. Fuel injection is precise. The computer adjusts everything. Detergents and premium gasoline keep the system clean. If you have a problem, it's because you bought cheap gas, and the solution comes from a bottle with a brand name that costs $80. That story feels clean. It's what the parts counter tells you. It's what the dealership prints on the invoice. It sounds like engineering. But here is the crack in the story. In 1986, the Society of Automotive Engineers published a paper, SAE 86234, measuring fuel system deposit formation across a fleet of 30 identical vehicles. Half ran on standard unleaded, half ran on a blend with double the detergent additive. After 10,000 miles, every single engine had measurable carbon deposits on the intake valves, including the ones with premium fuel. The difference was not elimination. It was a delay of about 3,000 miles. That is not a solution. That is a bandage with a marketing budget. If that landed on you the way it landed on me, you already know the feeling, the recognition that you've been paying premium for marketing, not mechanics. This channel exists to pull the receipts out of hiding, one line at a time. Subscribe if you want to keep seeing the difference between a real fix and a bill that just makes you feel poor. And while you're here, drop the word bandage in the comments. Tell me what it cost you the last time you were sold one. Now watch what happens when a mechanic opens the hood of a car that has only ever seen dealership services. The throttle plate is black. The idle air passage is reduced to the width of a pencil lead. The back of the intake valves look like a barbecue grate. The mechanic takes a photo, shows it to the owner, and says, carbon buildup. The solution is a solvent, applied by hand, scraped off with a brush, and then a computer reset that clears the adaptive learn table. Total cost to the shop, about $3 in solvent and 45 minutes of labor. Total to you, you already know the number. This is where most people miss it. The dealership service writer tells you your engine needs a decarbonization procedure. That phrase sounds technical. It sounds like something that requires a machine, a certification, a fee. But the procedure is older than the internet, and the fluid you need is sitting on the shelf of every auto parts store in the country. It is not sold in a flashy bottle. It is not on the end cap display. It costs $1.80. The old mechanics didn't call it a decarbonization procedure. They called it a tune-up. And the first step was not a bottle of branded snake oil. It was something called sea foam, or Berryman's, or a can of Carburetor Cleaner that costs less than a sandwich. If you have ever handed a mechanic $300 and walked out with a reset light instead of a fixed car, you know the feeling of being treated like a wallet on legs. That feeling has a name. It is the dealership profit margin on ignorance. Now, here is the part you are not supposed to know. The same carbon deposits that build up on your intake valves. They build up in your combustion chambers, on your spark plugs, inside your oxygen sensor. Each layer of carbon raises the compression ratio slightly. The engine starts to knock. The knock sensor detects it. The computer retards the ignition timing. The engine loses power. Fuel economy drops. The exhaust smells different. You start spending more money at the pump, then more at the shop, and the cycle feeds itself. Sojuom knew this by the sound of an engine at idle. He could hear knock long before any sensor reported it, and his first question was always the same. When did you last let it breathe? He meant water, distilled water, the cheapest thing you can put into a running engine that is not fuel, oil, or coolant. And it does more to clean carbon deposits than any of the $80 bottles ever will. Here is how it works. Water introduced into the intake airstream as a fine mist turns to steam inside the combustion chamber. Steam is a gas that expands at a much higher volume than liquid water. That expansion breaks carbon loose mechanically. The steam also reacts with the carbon at the molecular level, turning solid carbon into carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide, gases that exit through the exhaust. No scraping, no solvent, no computer reset, just physics applied cheaply. The old mechanics called it a steam cleaning. Some of them did it by dipping a rag in a bucket of water and holding it just above the carburetor. Others used a spray bottle aimed at the throttle body. They did not mention this to customers because it sounded too simple. And simple does not sell. That kind of knowledge doesn't come from a service manual. It comes from a generation of mechanics who learned by listening, not by plugging in a scanner. If you want to belong to that brotherhood, subscribe. Every video here is a handshake with someone who fixed cars before the internet told them how. And in the comments, tell me, have you ever tried a steam cleaning on your own engine, or did you just hear about it right now? Let's go back to the dealership repair order, the line item for fuel system cleaning. You see it on the invoice and you think, they flushed something through the rails, they hooked up a machine, they did something you cannot do yourself. But the machine they use is a pressurized canister of solvent that costs them $7. The labor is flat rate, 30 minutes. The total markup is over 1,500%. Meanwhile, the same effect, sometimes better, can be achieved with a product called PEA, polyethyramine. It is the active ingredient in nearly every quality fuel system cleaner. It works by breaking the chemical bond between carbon and metal. But here is the piece most people miss. PEA needs time and temperature to work. A single tank treatment driven at highway speed for 2 hours is more effective than a dealership flush that takes 20 minutes. And a can of PEA concentrate costs $12. You just bypassed an $80 service. And your engine is cleaner than it was at the dealership. Now, here is the part that makes the old mechanics laugh. The same dealership that charges you $400 for a decarbonization will sell you a bottle of their own branded fuel system cleaner at the checkout counter for $30. It is the same chemical, same concentration, same manufacturer, different label. They let you buy the cure at retail, then charge you 10 times that to apply it. If this made sense instantly, it is because you already knew. Some people hear this and ignore it. You are not that person. Write this in the comments. What did the dealership charge you for that you fixed yourself later? At what point did the feeling shift from frustration to recognition? But the steam cleaning is not a party trick. It is a diagnostic tool. Because after the steam breaks the carbon loose, the engine changes. Sometimes it runs smoother. Sometimes it runs worse. And the worst case is the one that matters. If an engine runs worse after a steam cleaning, it is because carbon was holding something together. A gasket, a seal, a ring. The carbon was filling a gap that should not exist. When the carbon leaves, the compression drops, and the leak becomes visible. That is not a failure of the cleaning. It is a revelation of a pre-existing problem that the dealership would have found at 4 times the cost. Old mechanics used steam cleaning the way a doctor uses a stress test, not to fix, to reveal. And here is another layer. The most common cause of engine knock in a modern vehicle is not bad gas. It is carbon deposits on the piston crown reducing the combustion chamber volume by 1 to 2 cubic centimeters. That volume reduction raises the compression ratio by approximately half a point. Half a point of compression is enough to push a modern engine past its knock threshold. You are not buying premium gas because your engine requires it. You are buying premium gas because carbon deposits have raised your compression past the design limit. Fix the carbon, and regular gas runs fine. That is a steady savings of 20 cents per gallon for the life of the engine. This is where the contradiction becomes personal. The industry's solution to carbon buildup is more frequent oil changes with high detergent oil. That is true. But the oil change interval recommended by the manufacturer is already designed around the assumption of some carbon buildup. Extending the interval by even 2,000 miles doubles the rate of deposit formation. And the oil that the dealership sells you, the branded synthetic at $12 a quart, is not chemically different from the house brand that costs $6. The difference is marketing spend, not additive package. The SAE paper I mentioned earlier also tested oil deposit control across 12 commercial oils. The cheapest oil in the test performed within 94% of the most expensive one. You are paying $200 for an oil change that could be done for $40. And the extra money is not buying cleaner oil. It is buying a lobby. Here is the specific fix, the one the old mechanic would give you if you asked him over a cup of coffee. Once a year, before an oil change, run a can of PA-based fuel system cleaner through a full tank of regular gas. Drive it on the highway for at least 2 hours at steady throttle. Then change the oil. The carbon deposits that are loosened by the cleaner will be carried out in the oil change. Do this in the fall, before winter, when the cold air and dense fuel mixture hit the carbon hard. Total additional cost, $12 and a 2-hour drive you were probably going to make anyway. You just replaced $300 in dealership services, and your engine will start better, idle smoother, and use less fuel. The tailpipe smell will change. The oil will stay cleaner longer. The NOx sensor will stop pulling timing. That feeling of control, when you realize the machine answers to you, not to a service writer, is the real reward. Subscribe to lock that feeling in for every repair from here on. The next video shows you a trick the dealerships tried to erase from the manuals altogether. And in the comments, drop a single word. 72. That's the year the old mechanic first whispered this to me. This is just the surface. What comes next changes everything. There is a 60-year-old trick that the dealership industry has actively tried to bury. It involves a rubber hose, a bottle of ATF, and a vacuum port on the intake manifold. It costs nothing. It takes 10 minutes, and it cleans deposits from places no fuel system cleaner can reach. You will not find this in any service manual published after 1985. It was removed. Deliberately. If this opens something, the next video closes it in a way you will not expect. That first rattle you heard at idle, the stumble on a cold morning. You have been paying for a problem that costs $12 to fix. The difference between paying and knowing is a single drive. The old mechanic sees the carbon. He feels the compression. He hears the knock that the computer tries to hide. He does not need a diagnostic. He needs a wrench and a can of something that costs less than a meal. You can be that person. Not the one who pays, the one who sees.